Ali, the queen who craved a man's love every second of the day, possessed a body filled with insatiable desire. Cursed by a demon, her body was a vessel of torment. Whenever the curse took hold, her mind would cloud with confusion, and only intimate contact with a man could quell the burning need. At first, it was only the nights that were unbearable. Now, the fire spread to the days, becoming increasingly uncontrollable. Even clutching something cold offered no respite from the searing heat within. Her body yearned for a man's touch. But today was different. Ali awoke with unusual clarity, the burning sensation gone. Then she remembered. Last night, she had seemingly thrown herself at a man. This was a disaster. Not only was her virtue lost, but her hopes of entering the convent were now all but extinguished. Though she couldn't recall the man's face, the memory of his touch was pleasant, and the cursed mark on her back was strangely quiet. But if the man spread rumors, her situation would become dire. She had witnessed firsthand what happened to her mother. Accused of framing the royal heir, her mother had been dragged to the executioner's block. Overnight, Ali, once the kingdom's beloved jewel, a princess of noble birth and the height of fashion, had lost her father's love and become the kingdom's scorned daughter. Mocked for having her beloved younger brother taken away, she was also relentlessly tormented by her stepmother, Pamela, who saw her as a thorn in her side. Thankfully, after her half-brother, the 8th prince, ascended the throne, her older half-brother had shown her kindness and support, persuading her to abandon her desire to become a nun. But tragedy was unavoidable. During a hunting expedition, Ali was kidnapped. She awoke on a dark altar, cursed by a demon to be consumed by lust. Since then, Ali had been constantly tormented by powerful desires. During these episodes, she lost all control over her body. The thought of rumors about her impropriety spreading terrified her. She had to act first, find a man, and silence him before the whispers escaped this hellish kingdom. From her maids, she learned that the Red Knight commander of the Royal Knights had carried her back, unconscious. She ordered her maids to keep the matter quiet, to call no physician. Though surprised, Ali summoned the commander. As he stood before her, earnestly pledging his loyalty to the crown and vowing secrecy, Ali felt a surge of bitter amusement. Does such loyalty, she challenged, extend to pleasuring foreign princesses? Overwhelmed by the curse's influence, Princess Ali had slept with Duke David, her mother's murderer. Ever since she'd encountered the demon's curse, nothing seemed to go right. Not only had she carelessly given away her virginity, but she had no memory of the man who had taken it. Ali summoned the Red Knight commander who had brought her back that night, intending to warn him to silence. The confrontation revealed he wasn't the one. All signs pointed to the one person she least wanted to face, Duke David, her mother's murderer. The Red Knight commander had merely followed orders, carrying her unconscious form back to her chambers. Now, she had made things worse. Another person knew of her indiscretion. Leaving the palace, the Red Knight commander was deeply disturbed. From the information he had, he deduced that Princess Ali had been intimate with someone without knowing their identity. It hadn't been consensual. It had happened while she was in an altered state of mind. Recalling that night, remembering how he had delivered the princess to Duke David, the Red Knight commander felt a surge of anger. He couldn't believe the Duke would dare take advantage of her like that. He resolved then and there to protect Ali. At Duke David's celebratory banquet, the Red Knight commander noticed the Duke leave midway and follow Princess Ali. Wary, he moved to intercept. Their eyes met, sparks flying. Looking at the man before her, Ali felt a whirlwind of emotions. They had once been childhood friends, inseparable. His family had been her mother's staunchest supporters, fiercely loyal. But when her stepmother, Pamela, had accused her mother of hiring dark mages to curse the royal family, David had been the one to arrest her, the one to deliver her to the executioner. While the world hailed him as a hero, praising his valor for single-handedly destroying the dark mage's stronghold and recovering the lost holy sword, in Ali's heart, he was a traitor, unforgivable, and she would never allow herself to have that kind of relationship with him. She immediately ordered the Red Knight commander to escort him away. Duke David, seeing him about to leave in a moment of desperation, blurted out that she wanted to be betrothed to him. Unexpectedly, the first person to support Ali and David's marriage was her stepmother, the Empress Consort Hong, who usually treated her like a thorn in her side. Ali sent her maid to fetch scissors, wanting to cut off the hair Duke David had kissed as he left. She refused to have even the slightest connection with her mother's murderer. She wouldn't miss any opportunity to humiliate him. Thankfully, she had already told him that what happened that night was just an accident, that it wasn't her first time and she wouldn't dwell on it. She had even threatened him, saying that if he wasn't afraid of their encounter being exposed and ruining all his achievements, he was welcome to make it public. She wouldn't care. She assumed he would give up on the idea of betrothal after this. However, much to her surprise, the excited maid returned not with scissors, but with news that Duke David, due to his admiration for the princess, intended to settle in the capital. Furthermore, he announced his formal support for the princess. Even the second prince summoned him for a meal, questioning whether Duke David's sudden support was prearranged. Ali completely understood her brother's concerns. She knew that as the only remaining royal bloodline, even as an adopted daughter, marrying David would pose a threat to her brother. She had no desire for power, nor did she want to be misunderstood. She assured her brother of her stance, telling him not to worry. Having finally seen the second prince off, Ali was about to leave when she bumped into her stepmother. She expected a furious outburst, but instead, the Emperor's consort suggested that Ali seize this opportunity and marry Duke David. Ali was instantly bewildered. Something felt amiss. What new scheme was her stepmother plotting? Upon returning to her quarters, she was further startled by a mountain of gifts from David. Among the gifts were courtly gowns, expensive jewels, and a handwritten letter from David, reaffirming his unwavering support for the princess. Ali was furious. She initially wanted to return everything. But recalling Pamela's unusual behavior, a daring thought crossed her mind. Could it be that Duke David and Pamela were already in cahoots, planning to use this method to completely confine and control her life? At Duke David's blessing ceremony, Princess Ali, suffering from the demon's curse, was once again consumed by the urge to overpower her enemy. To discourage Duke David's intentions of betrothal, Ali exchanged all the lavish gifts for supplies and sent them to the slums. Unexpectedly, she encountered Bishop Owen, sent by the Holy See there. Ali had heard from her stepmother at David's celebratory banquet that the Holy See would send a bishop to bestow a holy blessing upon the distinguished Duke David. She hadn't expected Bishop Owen to be so young. In the carriage, looking at the man's fair skin, sun-like golden hair, and angelically flawless face, Ali silently prayed that he hadn't noticed the demon mark on the back of her neck. She couldn't bear to imagine what would happen if she, the daughter of a black magic-wielding criminal, were discovered to bear the mark of a demon. However, until she bid farewell to Bishop Owen, he seemed oblivious to her secret. The Red Knight commander cautioned Ali against letting her guard down and offered to help strengthen her security, but Ali flatly refused. Everyone privately discussed the princess's coldness, but Ali knew that only by being disliked by everyone could she live peacefully under her stepmother's watchful eye. The day of the blessing ceremony finally arrived. Bishop Owen chanted the benediction, his body radiating a noble, pure blue light as he bestowed the divine blessing upon Duke David. From this day forward, he would be under the protection of God and the Pope. Looking at the beautiful light, seemingly capable of dispelling all evil, Ali's heart suddenly raced. The familiar feeling of being controlled by the mark surged through her. The demon mark, which she thought had vanished, was resurrected at this moment. Seeing Duke David's body react instantly, she refused to live under this curse forever. She wouldn't have an unwanted relationship with someone she loathed. Ali fled in a panic. Unexpectedly, Duke David, having finished the ceremony, blocked her path, demanding to know why she was so repulsed by him. In his agitation, he grabbed Ali's hand. Unable to bear it any longer, Ali cried out, startling Duke David, who quickly asked if she was unwell. Ali, under the sway of the demon's curse, flushed crimson. Desire radiated from her, a terrifying sight. Princess Ali still couldn't believe it. Last night, she had spent the night with the Holy Kingdom's Bishop Owen, and that angelic-faced Bishop Owen, along with the Holy Pope, were actually father and son. The whole situation felt incredibly melodramatic. During Ailey's blessing ceremony, the curse flared up. Duke David cornered her on her way back, and she was on the verge of completely losing control, about to repeat her past mistake. At that critical moment, Bishop Owen appeared, claiming to have business with her. His arrival not only completely disrupted the tense atmosphere, but also bewildered Duke David. He hadn't even dealt with the Red Knight commander, who seemed suspiciously close to Ailey, and now an even more troublesome rival had appeared. Caught between a rock and a hard place, Duke David wondered when he would ever catch a break. At Ailey's private palace, Bishop Owen gracefully prepared tea. Ailey couldn't help but sigh. Such a handsome young man. Why would he choose to become a bishop in a monastery? How many women must be heartbroken? Worse, she found herself reacting to him. Startled, Ailey struggled to control her emotions, commenting on how holy and miraculous Bishop Owen's blessing crystal was today. She'd never seen such a miracle and admitted she was almost envious of Duke David. To her surprise, Bishop Owen offered to give her one right then and there. It would be the same, he explained, except without the Holy Kingdom's protection. As she felt the holy light grace her brow, Ailey suddenly realized the demonic resistance within her was growing fiercer. She asked Bishop Owen to summon a maid. At that moment, he noticed the demonic aura clinging to her. He told her that once the curse was triggered, only a man could calm it, and he was willing to be that man. He then told her to embrace him. Ailey was stunned. She couldn't imagine doing such a thing with a bishop. Seeing her hesitation, Owen told her that if this continued, the two conflicting forces within her would cause a mental breakdown, ultimately leading her to lose consciousness and become a beast-like creature. Seeing Ailey still concerned about damaging his reputation even at this point, Owen was so moved that he could only unleash his full power in the next season. He told Ailey that his father was the leader of the Holy See, Pope Hong, so the apple didn't fall far from the tree. It didn't matter how he played with women. Ailey was nearly thunderstruck. She never imagined that the bishops, who were supposed to remain celibate their entire lives, would have such an unconventional relationship. Ailey was on the verge of collapse. The dark and holy forces within her were alternately assaulting her mind and will. Her eyes burned with a fiery intensity, her body flushed with heat. Those burning desires surged forth, written all over her face. Even worse, the angelic-faced man before her was only adding fuel to the fire. He whispered words that made her blush, suggesting that if she had to sleep with someone, it might as well be him. As he spoke, he moved closer. Ailey, completely weakened by the demonic mark, collapsed to the floor. Tears welled in her eyes, making her undeniably pitiful. Even Owen couldn't resist such an alluring princess. He lifted her chin and kissed her. Looking at the man's perfect physique, his smooth lines, for a moment, Ailey actually thought that maybe the demon's mark wasn't so bad after all. Bishop Owen was clearly much more skilled than Duke David. Still, doing this with a bishop felt somewhat shameful. Contrary to her anxiety, Bishop Owen seemed completely unfazed, even commenting on how cute she looked right now. He told her not to overthink things, to only think of the two of them. After their passion subsided, Owen looked at the peacefully sleeping Ailey. Bishop Owen gently began to clean her body. A subordinate entered to report something and was surprised to find that, for the first time ever, the bishop allowed a woman to lie in bed with him after the fact. It seemed he was quite pleased with tonight's companion. However, remembering that the gentle and refined Bishop Owen was ruthless and merciless when it came to killing, the subordinate wisely decided to suppress his curiosity to avoid any unfortunate consequences. This man was a more cruel demon than any other. Even the Pope's trusted divine officials were nothing more than pawns to him. Dark mages he used at will, a true betrayer of the faith. Bishop Owen's eyes flashed with a cold fury. He hadn't known someone dared to summon a demon and curse a foreign princess without his knowledge. It seemed it was time to properly discipline those dark mages who had slipped through the net. Unexpectedly, the ever-virtuous Princess Ailey, after losing her innocence once, had now slept with two men. Now she was truly someone of ill repute. The curse mark on her neck had quieted, and everything seemed to have returned to normal. If it weren't for the new clothes and the love bite on her collarbone, she would have thought last night was just a dream. It was fortunate that it was Bishop Owen last night. Given his position, he was bound to keep his secret. It's just that his claim of being an orphan felt a little too melodramatic. Perhaps it was a well-intentioned lie, meant to comfort her. The strange thing was, even though it was due to the curse, being intimate with a man like that, shouldn't she feel guilt and shame? Why did Ailey think it was rather nice? She worried, wondering if she'd always had a wanton nature. However, this anxiety quickly turned to shock when she received an invitation from Bishop Owen. She could hardly believe it. Bishop Owen, who should have already departed after the official blessing ceremony, had invited her to dine with him, seemingly unconcerned about appearances. Looking at the enthusiastic bishop, Ailey decided to draw a line. She told Owen that it was best they kept their distance. She had only come as agreed to apologize for last night. Bishop Owen simply chuckled dismissively. He said that if the princess intended to enter the convent, they would only grow closer. He added that her current state, lacking the ability to cope alone, yet bristling and rejecting kindness, was quite dangerous. His words left Ailey speechless, yet she still refused to yield. Owen continued, stating that as a bishop of the Holy Fruit, eradicating dark mages was his duty. He genuinely wanted to help Ailey remove the demon mark, and his offer wasn't solely because of their intimacy. Bishop Owen's words shocked Ailey. Perhaps she had been too sensitive. The man before her was, after all, a bishop of the Holy Fruit. He couldn't possibly be one of Empress Consort Hong's people. She should trust him. If a man is being this unconditionally kind to you, what else could it be but desire for your body? Ailey thought to herself, suspicious. Bishop Owen didn't reply, only grinned widely. Duke David had actually proposed to her. Did she really have to marry him to suppress the mark? Before leaving, Bishop Owen had discussed the demon mark with Ailey. He confirmed that its effects would indeed intensify over time. The only way to appease it was through intimacy with a man. The current cycle of its effects seemed to be about 10 to 15 days. Owen estimated that once the mark appeared, Ailey could withstand it for a maximum of 10 days. Any longer would be dangerous. He had imbued her with a holy blessing, but the two opposing forces might shorten the cycle. The only good news was that only the afflicted individual, the dark mage, and high-ranking clergy, at least at the bishop level, could see the mark. So, for the time being, Ailey didn't need to worry too much about being discovered. The bad news was that the demon mark could only be soothed, not eliminated, and those capable of wielding divine power were long gone. Weighing the options, the most permanent solution was to simply marry a man. But Princess Ailey clearly didn't want that. She would have to find another way to lift the curse. As he left, Bishop Owen told Ailey to write to him immediately if the mark began to burn. Although she didn't know if Bishop Owen would betray her in the future, the thought of his promised return calmed Ailey's anxiety. Composing herself, Ailey prepared to leave, only to run into the last person she wanted to see, Duke David. He sneered at her apparent closeness with Bishop Owen, mocking their shared breakfast. Ailey seized the opportunity to turn the tables. She bluntly stated that they did indeed get along, not just with Bishop Owen, but with the Red Knight commander as well. None of which, she added, was any of Duke David's concern. Watching David struggle to contain his anger, she thought she had successfully driven him away. Instead, to her astonishment, Duke David declared his intention to marry her. Ailey almost laughed in disbelief. She asked David why he would want someone as worthless and morally corrupt as her. David told her it was a childhood promise. Ailey scoffed, suggesting he find a respectable young lady if he wanted to marry. Their relationship had ended long ago, severed by the David family's betrayal of her mother. If he was plotting some sordid scheme with someone to restore his family's glory, she wouldn't let him succeed. Ailey had slept with 2 men. As for which 2 men, and in what order, she still suspected David's proposal was part of a larger conspiracy. As founding nobles, the David and Lean families had always been equals, holding immense power among the empire's 5 great families. Ever since her mother's execution, the David family, who had once fully supported her, then betrayed her, had returned nearly half their lands to the crown before withdrawing from the capital and fading into obscurity. 5 years passed. Duke David, now head of his family, single-handedly swept through the Black Mage's encampment, recovered the lost Holy Sword, and returned to the imperial capital once more, hailed as a hero of the kingdom. Ailey suspected his proposal was nothing more than a bid to avenge his past humiliation and restore his family's glory. This would explain why he'd willingly become Pamela's accomplice, using Ailey, his childhood friend, as a stepping stone to success. Contrary to Ailey's suspicions, Duke David insisted his proposal was to fulfill a childhood promise, one Ali had made inadvertently. An unconscious gesture from Ali sent David spiraling back to their shared past. Before he could lament the passage of time, Ali flatly rejected him, declaring she felt nothing but loathing for him. She demanded they go their separate ways and forget everything that had happened between them. Ali's coldness stung. Duke David could no longer contain his fury. He angrily demanded to know if she was involved with another man. Ali's heart pounded, but she feigned ignorance. To her shock, David directly asked if the man she'd spent the night with was Bishop Owen. According to his information, the two had entered a room together and hadn't emerged. A wave of icy fear washed over Ali. She hadn't realized that Duke David, despite his years away, still had so many informants within the palace. Thankfully, he had no concrete proof. Otherwise, even her stepmother, Pamela, wouldn't spare her. Struggling to maintain her composure, Ali rebuked David, accusing him of insulting the bishop. She claimed she had fainted and that the bishop had merely been caring for her. Nothing untoward had occurred. David recalled noticing Ali's pale complexion that day and immediately expressed concern for her well-being. Ali remained unmoved, reiterating that their relationship was over and that he had no right to interfere in her affairs. Seeing her resolve, Duke David played his final card. Ali gasped, her hand flying to her mouth at the sight of the beautiful white horse. Duke David's promise hadn't been metaphorical. He had brought Circle back to her. Years had passed, and the once stubborn foal, who had only allowed Ali near, was now fully grown. Circle recognized her instantly. The reunion between horse and rider, their affectionate interaction, transported Ali back to her childhood. David smiled, recalling how he had promised to give Circle to her when the horse was older. Her mother had been alive then. Everything had been happy. But now, she had more immediate concerns. Pamela had orchestrated this horse race with the sole intention of humiliating Ali publicly. She had even instructed the other noble women to openly mock and belittle her. Ali suspected her stepmother, with her devious methods, would likely tamper with the horses. Just as she was contemplating how to handle the situation, Duke David had arrived with Circle, a true blessing in disguise. However, the jealous Duke, having just confronted Bishop Owen, now turned his attention to the Red Commander standing nearby. Fortunately, the Red Commander was composed and didn't engage with him. Otherwise, the situation could have become truly awkward. In all fairness, the Red Commander's attire today left little to the imagination, accentuating his physique. Ali found her gaze, as if drawn by an unseen force, lingering on his thighs. She even blurted out a compliment about his clothes. Clearly, her willpower was weak, and she was still susceptible to such distractions. Seeing Ali's hesitation, the Red Commander offered to assist her. But before he could move, Ali gracefully swung herself on Circle's back, leaving him stunned. It was Circle, indeed. The familiar feeling instantly transported her back to her youth. Gripping the reins, Ali readied herself and urged Circle forward. The Red Commander, startled, warned her about the crowd ahead and cautioned her against going too fast. Duke David, however, dismissed his concerns, stating that Ali had always been the center of attention at such events. With all eyes upon her, the princess expertly guided Circle over the railing, eliciting gasps from the onlookers. In that moment, Ali, astride her horse, was a beacon of light, captivating everyone present. Their proud and elegant princess had returned. Watching Ali's long-absent smile, Duke David wondered if this had been the right choice after all. While some rejoiced, others seethed. Ali's grandstanding did not sit well with Pamela. How dare this disgraced princess ruin her plans? Pamela felt as if she had shot herself in the foot. Duke Leon of the Empire's most powerful family was about to return to the capital. To gain the support of the austere Earl Ray and strengthen her own position, she had meticulously planned this horse race, intending for Earl Ray's daughter to be the star of the event as a gesture of goodwill. Forcing Ali to participate had been purely to humiliate her publicly, just as she had done in the past. She hadn't anticipated that the disgraced princess would not only disrupt her carefully laid plans, but also earn the admiration of everyone present, including her own son. It's infuriating that he's the Empire's only remaining royal. Killing him would likely incite public outrage and destabilize the new regime. What's more troublesome is that Grand Duke Leon has publicly vowed to protect him. As the only family capable of rivaling Duke David, we absolutely cannot allow this matter to create friction with Grand Duke Leon. It seems we'll have to work through Princess Ailey. No one knows a mother better than her son. The emperor warned his mother against harming his sister. It had been a long time since Pamela had seen him so concerned. The thought of Ailey was a constant thorn in Pamela's side. Looking at Ailey's bright smile, a venomous plan began to fester in Pamela's mind. Duke David emerged from the Empress's chambers. He had just consulted with the most prudent and rational leader amongst the 5 great families, the aged Marquis. The old Marquis believed that Ailey's spirit was now broken, making her unsuitable for leadership. He disagreed with Duke David's future ambition to install her as Empress, considering it a foolish endeavor. Moreover, in Ailey's eyes, the relationship between them was practically that of enemies. However, the Marquis was deeply puzzled. Why, after the execution of Ailey's mother, had her native kingdom of Aelia remained silent? Logically, such a humiliating death of a royal princess should have been enough to justify even war. Duke David simply stated that Aelia was too weak and took his leave. As for the Marquis's final question, asking why he persisted despite knowing all this, Duke David didn't answer. He simply strode away, as if transported back to an afternoon years ago. The young girl looked at him, declaring with unwavering determination that she would become empress. She demanded he promise to support her, to gather the other nobles, and to never leave her side. They had to stay together always. Ailey never imagined that, as a foreign princess, she would be nearly assaulted within the very walls of her own palace. After the horse race, her half-brother, the emperor, unexpectedly visited her, gifting her a black horse. He informed her that he had instructed the servants to prepare the riding grounds for her exclusive use. To thank her brother, Ailey decided to fetch some pearl black tea from the storeroom as a gift in return. Walking through the palace corridors, Ailey felt a strange unease in the air. The hallways, usually brightly lit, were shrouded in darkness. Her anxiety intensified just as she decided to hurry back. A figure lunged from the shadows, clamping a hand over her mouth. Ailey bit down hard. As the attacker recoiled in pain, she cried out for help, but the man behind her reached out and touched the demon mark on the back of her neck. Ailey trembled, her body going limp. The man quickly gagged her with a cloth and shoved her to the ground. Ailey's eyes widened in terror. The man's hands were tearing at her clothes. She struggled, but no sound escaped her. He pinned her wrist down and climbed on top of her. Ailey squeezed her eyes shut, tears of despair streaming down her face. Just then, a frantic knocking came from the door. Simultaneously, the mysterious man on top of Ailey emitted a strange scent and quickly fled. The door opened. The Red Knight commander was taken aback by the sight of Ailey, disheveled and trembling. He rushed to her side, anxiously asking if she was all right. Because of the darkness, Ailey couldn't describe the attacker's appearance, only the direction in which he had escaped. She watched the Red Knight commander disappear, then wept silently. The terrifying realization struck her that the mysterious man knew about her mark, and she knew nothing about him. A sudden noise made her blood run cold. Had the attacker returned? A royal princess, driven to the brink of assault, with no one to protect her. Seeing the Red Knight commander reappear, Ailey's racing heart finally calmed. She had thought the attacker had come back. The Red Knight commander draped his cloak around her, assuring her that he had deployed men to search for the attacker. For her safety, he would personally escort her back to her chambers. They walked back in silence. Once the door was closed, Ailey finally broke down. She couldn't believe that just moments ago, a foreign princess had nearly been assaulted in her own palace. Ailey clawed at the cursed mark on her neck, drawing blood. She had endured the Black Mage's curse on the altar. She couldn't understand why fate was so cruel. She missed her mother, her brother. She longed for someone to hold her, to tell her that everything would be all right. She yearned for companionship, for protection. But her current life felt endless and bleak. Even the man who had promised to always be by her side only brought her heartache. A knock at the door. The Red Knight commander appeared again. Ailey hastily wiped away her tears and composed herself. Unexpectedly, the Red Commander knelt beside the bed and gently embraced her. He begged Princess Elise forgiveness for his current impropriety, explaining that he only wished to comfort her and meant no harm. He assured her he would act as if nothing had happened and encouraged her to cry if she needed to. Elise, unable to hold back any longer, wept openly, releasing the pent-up anguish within her heart. The Red Commander clenched his fists and told Elise that he would protect her from now on, urging her to trust him. The next morning, he intended to inform the Emperor of the incident, but the White Commander blocked his path. He argued that doing so would damage the princess's reputation. The Red Commander angrily accused him of shirking responsibility and making excuses, his true motive being to cover up the White Knight's failure to protect the princess. Everyone knew that, unlike the commoner composed Red Knights, all members of the White Knights were nobles. To a certain extent, they were more like Pamela's private army. It was hard not to suspect that this entire incident was orchestrated by Pamela from the beginning. The two commanders, usually at odds, surprisingly reached an agreement. One offered to share the responsibility of protecting the princess, while the other conveniently proposed to withdraw in order to protect the Emperor and Empress. Observing their behavior, the Emperor casually mentioned that the intruder from last night had been apprehended by the Black Knights. The Red Commander was stunned. The Black Knights, one of the 3 great knight orders of the Empire, were directly under the Emperor's command. So the Emperor knew about last night's events. How had the Black Knights managed to be at the princess's detached palace? The Red Commander was filled with questions. He had personally searched every corner and found nothing. He wanted to dare to ask how the Black Knights had arrived so promptly and captured the intruder. The Emperor pardoned the Red Commander's boldness and explained that, knowing the White Knights were responsible for the princess's safety, he had, out of concern for his sister's well-being, occasionally arranged for the Black Knights to patrol the detached palace. It must have been good fortune that they happened to catch the thug. The Red Commander silently conceded. It seemed he had been overly suspicious. Fortunately, the Emperor ultimately agreed to entrust the Red Knights with the princess's protection. He vowed that such a terrifying incident would never happen again. He remarked that the roses in the courtyard were in bloom. Elise, who had remained confined to her room since the intrusion, finally emerged. Inhaling the fragrance of the flowers, her spirits seemed to lift slightly. A distant glimmer caught her attention. To her surprise, as she drew closer, she discovered the shimmering object was a letter. Bishop Owen had finally written. He mentioned that the investigation into the brand had progressed. Due to the sensitive nature of the matter, he would visit her personally soon. Elise smiled faintly. It seemed Bishop Owen had indeed discovered something. He had promised to help remove her brand when he left. She wondered when he would return. The sound of measured footsteps interrupted her thoughts. She turned around, only to be stunned by the sight before her. The Red Knights had barely begun their duty of protecting the princess when their mistress was accosted by the Empress. Looking at the mess strewn across the room and recalling the princess's instructions to remain silent, the Red Knights were utterly bewildered. Ever since their commander had led them in swearing allegiance to the princess, there had been grumbling amongst them. The Red Knights held the lowest rank among the royal knights, forever comprised of commoners. Guarding the princess sounded honorable, but everyone knew the truth. She was the abandoned princess of the empire. Any hope of advancement was now completely lost, not to mention their new mistress wore an expression of arrogance and disdain, offering no gratitude. They'd heard that Pamela's White Knights had received gold and a welcoming feast. Yet, the princess hadn't uttered a single kind word. Now, they watched her being bullied by Pamela, unable to even resist. Her maids remained passive, like sheep. Even her dress was left for the princess to manage herself. Was this a common occurrence? The rain intensified, silver threads blanketing the empire. Elise sat alone at her table, silently brushing her hair. Since the Red Commander had declared that the Red Knights would protect her under the Emperor's orders, she knew Pamela wouldn't leave her alone. She hadn't expected her to find out so quickly and come storming in, flying into a rage. Watching Pamela rant and rave, throwing things and creating chaos, Elise finally retorted that if her stepmother's men hadn't been negligent, her brother wouldn't have sent the Red Knights. Pamela, however, blamed Elise's attire, claiming her immodest appearance, unbefitting a royal, had given the assailant an opportunity. In her fury, she hurled a dress at Elise's face. While berating Elise for deliberately trying to drive a wedge between them, Pamela Ali's stepmother, seemed pleased that her son, the emperor, was finally taking notice of Ali's attire. Ali tried to dodge the dress Pamela flung at her, but a sharp ornament caught her cheek. Blood welled up. Pamela burst into laughter, telling Ali to wear that very dress to the emperor's birthday banquet. She added that since Ali clearly couldn't afford anything decent, she needn't bother with a gift either. If Ali could have chosen, she wouldn't have stayed a single day longer in this hellish royal court. She could barely protect herself, let alone those who were kind to her. But then she thought of her brother and all he had done for her. For his sake, she had to endure. Her brother was the only reason she remained in the palace. Ever since she had fallen from grace and become a virtual hostage, he was the only one who treated her with kindness. She had heard from the Red Knight commander that her brother had even dispatched the emperor's personal guard, the Black Knights, to protect her in secret. It was they who had captured the intruder. The intruder had been executed on the spot. Ali heard he was a royal attendant, working undercover. It was a shame she couldn't interrogate him herself, but she didn't have the authority. At least with the Red Knight commander assigned to her protection by her brother, she had nothing to fear. She used to pity her brother. Because of his illegitimate status, she worried he might be seen as a threat to her and her younger brother's position, so she had always kept her distance. Now, she was the only one left with royal blood. In a way, her very existence was a threat to the new regime, to her brother, the emperor. Yet, even now, he was quietly looking after her. When she had wanted to enter the convent, it was her brother who had insisted she stay, agreeing to let her leave the palace when she turned 25. Pamela was becoming increasingly cruel, tormenting her relentlessly. Ali didn't know how much longer she could hold on. The brand on her neck felt hot, though the temperature was low. It should hold for a while longer. She just hoped Bishop Owen would receive her letter and return quickly. For now, she had to focus on the emperor's birthday banquet. If she had a choice, she wouldn't go. The fact that Pamela had personally chosen her dress meant something was afoot. Was she about to fall into another trap, to become the object of everyone's ridicule again? Especially at an event where Grand Duke Leon would be present. A commotion erupted outside. Someone was forcing their way in. Ali turned and saw Grand Duke Leon. She froze. Speak of the devil. Grand Duke Leon, clearly agitated, demanded to know why she hadn't contacted him. Ali dismissed the others. She watched as Leon sat down opposite her, fuming. He had obviously come about the intrusion. Ali told him her affairs were none of his business, and he needn't concern himself. Leon was about to angrily retort when he noticed the gash on her cheek. He stared, stunned. The princess, once treated like a precious jewel, was now so casually abused. In the past, even a scratch on her finger would have resulted in the execution of her maids. Now, with a cut on her face, she simply stated it was normal. Leon was overcome with emotion. Tears welled in his eyes. Ali stared, incredulous. Was he crying? Fury flared within her. She snapped at him, telling him she didn't need his pity and to leave. Instead, he stepped closer, took her hand, and called her his beloved queen. He gently kissed her hand, saying she shouldn't be treated this way. He had chosen to descend into hell, so she had to be all right. This couldn't continue. He would keep his promise and hold her hand, always. Outside, thunder rumbled and rain lashed down. Leon summoned the steward and ordered him to move up their plans. This time, he would make them pay. Ali lay in bed, tossing and turning, unable to sleep. Leon's tears haunted her. She couldn't decipher the emotion behind them. Was it pity? Remorse? It didn't matter. She had no reason to care. The clock ticked relentlessly. Ali closed her eyes, desperately trying to recall everything she had done to forget the past. She tried to force herself to hate Leon. Why did these memories betray her, confusing her? She had killed the man who had promised to return for her countless times in her heart. He had been absent every time she needed him most. Now he showed up, claiming he would be her shield. She would never forgive him. Not for her mother. Not for her brother. Never. The dream resurfaced. Ali was back in that night of consuming fire. She watched Grand Duke Leon approach, his face etched with concern. A push and pull warred within her. The searing brand of her curse urged her to push him away, yet her body yearned for his closeness. A tremor ran through her, and Ali flung herself at Leon, murmuring that she missed him. Leon flushed crimson, convinced he must have misheard. Ali pressed closer, pulling open his jacket and impatiently fumbling with the buttons until his undershirt was revealed. Leon was flustered. He hadn't realized Ali was so forward. The sounds of laughter drifted from the court festivities. His face burning, he reminded Ali that they were in a public place and suggested they find somewhere more private. Ali's cheeks were flushed, but her hands didn't stop. She unbuttoned his shirt and slipped her hand inside. Leon tried to stop her, but she caught his wrists, her grip surprisingly strong. He felt his control slipping away. An overwhelming wave of desire washed over him. A strange, intoxicating scent emanated from Ali. Leon's mind grew hazy. Lost in the intoxicating haze, his last shred of resistance crumbled. They kissed, desperate and hungry. The air in the flower garden thrummed with unspoken desires. Leon asked Ali if she forgave him. She replied that she had been waiting for his return. Leon held her tight, unable to believe his ears. He had dreaded their reunion, fearing her hatred, her wrath. But Ali held no animosity. Instead, she invited him to be her first. Leon was stunned. He had never imagined their reunion unfolding like this. The woman he adored, her eyes burning with desire, offered herself to him. No man could resist. He told her not to regret this, confessing that she would also be his first. Legend had it that once the demon hawk awakened, the cursed individual would be consumed by boundless desire. The only antidote was a man. Ali's eyes were glazed with longing, her body ruled by the curse, craving the man in her arms. Leon, fighting the overwhelming temptation, told her it wasn't the right time. He promised that when the time was right, when the misunderstandings were cleared, he would propose. Then, they would find a better place to spend the night together. Ali told a marriage felt too distant. She didn't want to miss this moment, their bodies entwined, mirroring the tangled threads of their destinies. Ali jolted awake. Reality and illusion blurred. The bittersweet pleasure felt so real. The hair she clutched in her hand was undeniably black. She could feel the lingering tenderness of Leon's care. Later, out of curiosity, she playfully covered his lips. He laughed like a child, and for a moment, they were transported back to a hazy past. Fate was cruel. Leon didn't know the lies the brand forced her to speak, the desires it compelled her to fulfill. So, when he excitedly proposed the next morning, he was met with only scorn and humiliation. Perhaps this was their inescapable fate. Distressed, Ali decided to take a walk in the garden. There, she encountered the Red Commander, who had clearly heard the news. Ali brushed it off as a typical scolding from her stepmother, nothing to worry about. The Red Commander was inwardly alarmed. As Pamela's power grew, she no longer bothered with even a pretense of civility in this already decided game. Only childish, brutal bullying remained for the princess. Ali knew the mark on her face was Pamela's warning to her and the Red Knights. It was the reason she preferred solitude. She couldn't even protect herself. She watched people discreetly withdraw, a familiar sting of loneliness mixing with a new, unwelcome feeling. The discomfort of the Red Commander's pity. The Red Commander, bless his oblivious heart, was about to make a grand gesture. Remembering Ali mentioning her fondness for small animals at the races, he had prepared a gift. Ali, stunned, blurted out, asking if he liked her. One question, and he fled. Ali groaned inwardly. She had only wanted to distract him from the injury on her face, not send him running. This had made things rather awkward. Ali was feeling annoyed when she saw the Red Knight Commander returning with a birdcage. It turned out he had gone to fetch a gift he had prepared for Ali, a hirus. Legend had it that this was a large bird with a mystical bloodline, notoriously temperamental and difficult to handle, even for the specialized bird-handling tribesmen. The hirus had a keen sense of smell and was highly intelligent. Not only could it deliver messages to designated individuals, but it could also be trained for other tasks. Hirus chicks were especially rare and precious. Acquiring this one was pure luck. The mother bird who incubated the egg had unfortunately died. He had managed to hatch this chick with great difficulty. The other eggs hadn't survived. Only this one lived. The Red Knight Commander had already made some arrangements and would later teach the princess some taming techniques. Looking at the aggressively fluffy little bird fluttering in the cage, Ellie couldn't help but remember that she had also kept many animals before. Sadly, they had all been slaughtered by her father. But the father who could kill her cherished animals was no longer alive. According to the Red Knight Commander, a hirus had a lifespan of at least 50 years. She thought it would probably stay by her side for a long time. Even if she went to the convent, she wouldn't be lonely. Just as Ali was immersed in the joy of interacting with the chick, the Red Knight commander produced a bottle of ointment, reminding her not to forget to apply it to the wound on her face. Bathed in sunlight, the princess, who usually kept her emotions in check, played with the little bird and finally laughed heartily. She didn't know what kind of decision the Red Knight commander had made in his heart as he watched this scene. Looking at the scar on her face in the mirror, Ellie knew that only by wearing this dress to the birthday banquet could she satisfy Pamela. Although she had asked the maids to take in the waist, because it was her stepmother's dress, no matter how it was altered, it was still too big. Although she didn't particularly like this style, considering the Red Knights who would be escorting her, she should at least dress up a little. The Red Knight's position was already awkward. If she appeared too shabby, it would only make them more susceptible to ridicule. The door opened. Watching the princess approach gracefully, the Red Knight could hardly take his eyes off her. He was both nervous and excited as he escorted her, arm in arm, standing even straighter, being ostracized themselves. He and his comrades could truly empathize with the princess's situation. The Red Knight commander glanced at the princess and was shocked to discover that the wound on her face had been caused by the decorations on the dress. Seeing her utter lack of resistance, had the princess always been so meekly and powerlessly submitting to violence? The Red Knight commander was stunned. The hall was resplendent. Laughter filled the air. Ali made her way through the crowd to find her brother and offered him sincere birthday wishes. The emperor was delighted to see Ali. Ali, however, felt guilty, explaining that she had only come in person and hadn't prepared anything else. The emperor urged her not to worry. He was happy just that she had come. Seeing them like this, Pamela couldn't stand it. She sarcastically remarked on Ali's rudeness. Ali had no choice but to reveal that it was her stepmother who had told her not to prepare anything. Unexpectedly, these words immediately drew malicious attacks from the crowd. Pamela seized the opportunity to launch into another round of tearful complaints. Ali couldn't help but recall how her stepmother had seized power overnight. Her brother, once the heir apparent, had been reduced to a mere figurehead. The empire transformed, and now, a birthday celebration for a puppet emperor. Ali had used almost all her remaining funds to buy a crystal carving of a golden crow as a 19th birthday gift for her brother. It was a gift that affirmed her brother's legitimacy, a gift of profound significance. But Pamela had smashed it without hesitation. Now, in a similar scene, she wondered what tricks Pamela would pull this time. However, Pamela seemed very pleased that she was wearing this dress, staring at the wound on her face as if admiring a masterpiece. Just then, the unexpected happened. A sudden cry broke the festive atmosphere of the hall. The emperor's birthday banquet had unexpectedly turned into a dramatic family reunion. Pamela was furious. Princess Ali was once again thrust into the spotlight. Commotion rippled through the crowd. Seeing everyone looking at her, Ali was bewildered. She looked behind her. A woman was kneeling there, seemingly out of nowhere. It was the baby boy in the woman's arms that had sparked the whispers. Pamela was enraged. This was not part of her plan. The woman, unable to hesitate any longer, held up the baby boy and revealed a secret that shocked everyone present. "This child is His Majesty's blood," the woman declared. The emperor froze. Ali was stunned. Pamela gasped. A strange silence descended upon the hall. Ali couldn't believe it. Her brother, the emperor, had a secret love child. He'd somehow managed to keep it hidden from everyone. This was utterly preposterous. Pamela trembled with rage. What was wrong with this woman? The emperor, however, erupted in furious denial. The two argued, their words clashing, truth and lies indistinguishable. Whispers rippled through the assembled guests. Ali felt there was more to the story. The emperor and the woman clearly knew each other. The woman, who said her name was Vivian, claimed she had spent a night with the emperor 2 years prior and soon after discovered she was pregnant. She explained that the emperor had explicitly stated he didn't want children and had threatened to kill her if she became pregnant. Out of desperation, she had raised the child in secret. Pamela beckoned the woman closer, bringing the child into view. As they looked upon the baby's face, both she and Ali gasped. The infant's clear blue eyes, pale golden hair, and fair cheeks were the spitting image of the emperor as a child. The child's parentage was undeniable. Ailey stared in disbelief at her brother, who continued his vehement denials. She couldn't understand his heartlessness. The crowd stirred again, murmuring about the unfortunate woman and the child's striking resemblance to the emperor. Pamela reached out to touch the baby's toes, noticing a birthmark identical to one the emperor had possessed as a child. She fell silent for a moment. Looking at the woman, Pamela quickly made up her mind. She announced that she would recognize the woman as the prince's mother and bestow upon her a noble title. The woman wept with gratitude and disbelief. The crowd whispered amongst themselves, questioning the rashness of the decision. However, no one dared question the Empress Dowager. What the emperor's reaction would be remained to be seen. The banquet hall shimmered with candlelight as everyone jostled to make a good impression on the future heir to the throne. At Pamela's prompting, everyone raised their glasses to welcome the little prince. The emperor, meanwhile, seemed powerless to resist the unfolding events. He turned to Ailey, his expression a mixture of helplessness and something else she couldn't quite decipher. Ailey, struggling with her own precarious situation, could offer no response. She had never harbored any desire for the throne. Yet, the sudden appearance of this little prince brought her one step closer to death. And, at that very moment, the brand on her chest throbbed, threatening to erupt once more. Time, she realized, was running out. Ailey turned to leave, but Grand Duke Leon, who had been watching her closely, blocked her path. In the quiet seclusion of the room, their eyes met. A heavy silence hung between them. For Ailey, the memory of that night remained vivid, but it was the curse, the brand, that had driven her. It changed nothing. If she could inflict even a small amount of pain on those who reveled in their happiness, it would be enough. Ailey's intention was still to endure, to wait until the day she could escape to the convent. Leon grew agitated. He told her that if she didn't fight, she would die. The convent, he warned, was simply a different kind of hell, no better than the palace. It was a place filled with the corpses of those who had lost in the struggle for power. Even the Pope's protection couldn't prevent assassination. Leon ruthlessly shattered Ailey's illusions. She lowered her eyes, defeated. Of course, she knew what he said was true, yet she still clung to the fantasy that she would be the lucky one, that she would earn the Pope's favor. If her brother continued to look after her, perhaps she could live the life she desired. Even if she lived under the constant threat of assassination, it would be better than remaining here, living a life devoid of hope. Seeing Ailey retreating into herself once more, Leon reached out and grabbed her arm. The unexpected contact triggered the brand, causing Ailey to cry out. Leon, startled, quickly released her. Ailey, her face flushed crimson, fled without explanation. The opulent palace seemed to stretch endlessly before her. The last time she had felt this helpless was the day of her mother's execution. Her father, ignoring her desperate pleas, had forced her to watch as her mother was hanged. After that day, her father had become a different man, and Ailey's nightmare had truly begun. Ailey ran, desperate to escape this suffocating life. For 5 years, she had dreamt of breaking free from this nightmarish fate. And yet, reality, however, only plunged him deeper into despair. After his mother's death, his doting father had changed overnight. He slaughtered all the animals Ailey loved and all the servants close to her. Grand Duke Leon, her childhood friend, was gone. Her close confidants had broken off contact. Her only brother had vanished without a trace. Left alone in this hellish palace, Ailey ran and ran, gasping for breath. She clutched the pendant at her chest so tightly that her fingers bled. Suddenly, a warm, masculine voice sounded behind her. Startled, Ailey turned to find the young bishop, Wynne, had returned. True to form, Wynne immediately noticed the cuts on Ailey's hands and face. Ailey tried to brush it off, claiming she'd been careless. Wynne didn't say a word to her clumsy excuse. He simply asked her to hold out her hand. Ailey, still puzzled, was stunned by what happened next. The young bishop was gently licking the blood from her hand. He told Ailey to be quiet and not disturb him while he used his divine power. Ailey's face was a mask of shock. What was she witnessing? How could a priest so casually perform such a bold act? Unlike Ailey, Wynne seemed completely unfazed. He matter-of-factly licked the blood clean, and even though the wound was already healed, he enthusiastically offered a handkerchief to wipe the brand on the back of her neck. Ailey's heart pounded in her chest. Blushing furiously, she quickly refused Wynne's offer. He reassured her, telling her that he would do such things in her room later, and that he would be more discreet. The atmosphere finally eased, and Win, no longer teasing, looked at Ali and asked if she needed help. In the quiet room, learning that Ali wanted to escape the palace and go to a convent, Win fell silent. Even now, the princess refused to give up on relying on men. Even though she knew the precariousness of her future, she was like a moth drawn to a flame. Win told Ali not to worry, that there were many ways to keep her safe. Ali just took it as a joke. Seeing this, Win gave a devilish grin and told her there was one way right now. Ali was taken aback when Win, talking about ensuring her survival, suggested finding a double to die in her place. Ali flatly refused. She couldn't bear to put someone else in danger. Win laughed, his eyes crinkling, and said he was only joking. He couldn't do something so shameless. There were always more solutions than problems. He'd even help her escape to a convent if necessary. She didn't need to worry about anything. He would always be there to heal her, as professional as a repairman. Unlike Grand Duke Leon's words, which had only filled her with despair, Ellie suddenly felt a strange sense of peace. However, this guy's healing methods were certainly unorthodox. It seemed like he was just teasing her. Under Ailey's knowing gaze, Win quickly cracked. He burst out laughing, which made Ailey laugh too. He complimented her smile, saying it was beautiful. Win paused, then explained that the abandoned princess of the kingdom was a frequent topic of conversation among the priests of the holy nation. 5 years ago, when Win first heard the princess's name, his curiosity was piqued. He couldn't imagine what expression someone so utterly abandoned could possibly wear other than one of misery. It wasn't until he saw the princess distributing supplies to the poor in the slums that Win realized she was such a kind and ordinary person, completely different from his own twisted personality. Although she was a bit like a hedgehog, reluctant to get close to people, she didn't possess the despair he had expected. The Princess Ailey he knew always shone brightly, even in hell. Even when she was down and rejected everything, she remained brave and full of life. Win didn't know if people were supposed to be like that. He only knew that he seemed to have changed. For the first time, he felt sadness for someone who was crying and wanted to offer comfort. For the first time, he accepted a compliment and laughed genuinely. One thing was certain. His mind was now full of the princess. However, he had come for something more important. According to his investigation, summoning a demon and enacting a curse required immense power. Even high-ranking priests struggled to achieve it. It was utterly impossible for an ordinary dark magician, unless they used the blood ritual, offering a chalice filled with the blood of sacrifices to the demon. Ailey's blood ran cold. She remembered the metallic tang in the air now. Like, subscribe, and follow. Little Win's about to reveal the truth. What secrets lie hidden behind the Demon God's brand? What could drive someone to risk 1,000 lives? Just to turn a foreign princess into a slave of desire, eternally tormented? Can a return of young Bishop Win clear the fog and reveal the truth? All right, everyone, pull up a chair. Let's pick up where we left off. Princess Ailey still couldn't understand why the curse she'd been afflicted with wasn't death or madness, but this prank-like loss of control, plunging her entirely into the throes of lust. Bishop Win believed that someone must be pulling the strings behind such a grand spectacle. He reasoned that if they could find and eliminate the instigator, the Demon God's brand would naturally dissipate. Win's words rekindled Ailey's hope, but she quickly found herself facing a new dilemma. She had absolutely no clue where to begin. First, she could rule out her stepmother, Pamela. Given Pamela's usual methods, if she knew about the brand, she would have simply put a man in Ailey's bedroom. Considering her mother's collusion with the dark magician and the subsequent execution, Pamela, even if she wanted to curse Ailey, would never take such a risk. Bishop Win, however, suggested the reason might not be so complicated. He pointed out that obsession, infatuation, even possessiveness could drive someone to want to turn the object of their desire into their puppet. Ailey's mind raced. One person came to mind. He had hunted dark magicians, understood them, and he was also the first man she'd been with when the brand activated. It was Grand Duke Leon. But remembering the heartbroken, tearful look in his eyes, Ali hesitated, dismissing the thought. Bishop Win suggested she try a different approach. Investigate incidents in the Empire where the death toll exceeded 1,000. He warned, however, that if the curse caster had planned this far in advance, the investigation would be a long one. He admitted he would prefer to heal the scars on Ailey's face first. Bishop Wynn gently caressed Ailey's cheek, slowly releasing divine power. This action, however, reactivated the dark demon god's brand within the princess. Ailey flushed crimson, her body feeling strange. Bishop Wynn, his eyes crinkling with a smile, asked if she needed any assistance. Ailey strongly suspected he was doing this on purpose. While he was admittedly an unconventional clergyman, he was always sincere in his help. Still, Ailey didn't want to force herself to do that. Perhaps she needed to take action. She couldn't be controlled by the current situation any longer. Ailey never would have imagined that the man standing before her, reeking of alcohol and weeping in despair, would be her brother, the Emperor. Her brother had just become a father at his birthday banquet. How would he be in this state now? Ever since the woman named Vivian, claiming to be her brother's lover, had appeared with her son, demanding recognition and joining the royal family, Ailey felt like the embodiment of misery. Utterly hopeless. Could someone please explain her brother's current state of despair? He saw Ailey and immediately began explaining his relationship with Vivian, even going so far as to kneel and beg her not to misunderstand. Ailey was stunned, unable to comprehend his reaction. She tried to see things from his perspective and offer comfort, only to hear a horrifying revelation from her brother's lips the next moment. Pamela had been forcing him to have children, going so far as to drug him and treat him like a breeding machine. Ailey was thunderstruck. This, however, explained why the usually cautious Pamela had so readily acknowledged the child. What could be more certain than a child she herself orchestrated? Her brother explained that since his ascension, his mother, Pamela, had been constantly pressuring him about heirs, and had even arranged for Vivian to conceive and bear his child. The current situation was far from what he desired. From the very beginning, he had never wanted to replace Ailey or become emperor. The reason he had delayed his marriage was the fear of creating new factions with the birth of an heir. New factions would only make Ailey's already precarious position even more difficult. Watching her brother frantically kowtow and beg for forgiveness, Ailey suddenly realized how much he had done for her, while she had never truly considered him. The past 5 years haven't just been an abyss for Ailey. Her brother, the Emperor, has also been living in hell. Growing up, his illegitimate status made his childhood awkward and isolating. As an adult, he's been treated as nothing more than a tool of power by their stepmother, Pamela. At what should have been a joyous birthday feast, his most shameful secret was publicly revealed. Overwhelmed by guilt and remorse, Ailey embraced her brother, begging him to send her to the convent immediately. She vowed never to burden him again and swore to leave. Her actions seemed to completely frighten him. He blurted out something even more shocking. Ailey could never have imagined it. Her brother, the Emperor, was willing to betray his own mother, Pamela, just to keep Ailey from leaving. He even promised that if she stayed, she could see her younger brother again. Ailey couldn't fathom the depth of her brother's resentment towards Pamela for him to say such a thing. But the prospect of seeing her younger brother was a joy she hadn't dared to dream of. After their mother's death, she'd heard her younger brother had been taken to his mother's homeland. And since the two countries were sworn enemies, Ailey couldn't imagine when or how such a reunion could ever happen. She knew that even going to the convent wouldn't solve anything. She couldn't even control her own body. Even if she agreed to her brother's plea and stayed, there was no guarantee she would actually see her younger brother. Lost in thought, Ailey stumbled as she left the room, nearly collapsing. The Red Knight commander, who happened to be approaching, quickly caught her, sweeping her up into his arms. As he carried her, he apologized for his boldness. Ailey didn't respond. Her body grew hotter and hotter, and she drifted into a feverish sleep. The Red Knight commander glanced down at the princess in his arms, a flush creeping up his cheeks. As the commander of the Empire's only commoner knight order, he was like a drawn sword, fiercely devoted to the code of chivalry. He usually held romantic love in disdain, yet he couldn't dismiss his feelings for the princess. He couldn't help but watch her, wanting to be near her, hoping she would accept his help. But the arrival of Grand Duke Leon at the princess's bedroom door shattered the moment. The Red Knight commander snapped back to attention, glaring at the man before him with icy resentment. Where had this man been during the princess's darkest days? Now, not only had he forcefully inserted himself into the princess's life, but he dared to offer his concern. What a shameless hypocrite. Seeing the Red Knight Commander's unwavering stance, Grand Duke Leon considered Ailey's situation. She didn't need people she could rely on. The Red Knight Commander, with his unwavering loyalty to chivalry, could be trusted. Finally, swallowing his displeasure, Grand Duke Leon allowed the commander to leave. The Red Knight Commander placed Ailey on the bed and noticed her burning skin. As he turned to summon a physician, Ailey opened her eyes and stopped him. Being carried by the Red Knight Commander had stirred the demonic mark within her, and it was about to erupt. Ailey felt a pang of regret. Perhaps she should have accepted Bishop Wynn's help after all. But now there was a man right here. Hold on, hold on. Our Red Knight Commander is finally about to be chosen. Just moments ago, Princess Ailey, her face flushed crimson, stopped the Red Knight Commander from fetching a physician. What a joke. This wasn't a call for a physician. It was the mark flaring up. The cure was right in front of her. The Red Knight Commander approached the bed, awaiting her command, only to be pulled down by his arm. He was met with a sudden, passionate kiss. Ailey pressed herself against him. The startled Red Knight Commander's eyes widened in disbelief. But he was a man, after all. Suppressed passion erupted, overwhelming all sense of propriety. Ailey looked into his eyes and asked him for one more small favor. Candlelight flickered on the window pane, creating a dreamlike atmosphere. Ailey vaguely heard someone calling her name. She opened her eyes and saw the Red Knight Commander before her, breaking out in a cold sweat. It had all been a dream. The Red Knight Commander, flustered, insisted he had only been trying to check her temperature and meant no offense. Hearing this, Ailey's face turned an even deeper shade of red. It was she, lost in her feverish fantasies, who had been the one to initiate the contact. She looked at the Red Knight Commander, trying to find something to say to ease the awkwardness. Without thinking, she blurted out a question about whether he was married. The Red Knight Commander was taken aback, but answered honestly that he was not married, nor did he have any plans to be. He finished with a searching look at the princess. Ailey realized she had asked a very personal question. The Red Knight Commander urged her to go back to sleep, assuring her that he was a healthy man with no physical deficiencies. Ailey was mortified by her constant blunders, suspecting the brand was nearing its limit. She felt exhausted. The Red Knight Commander had barely left the room when Grand Duke Leon, having doubled back, grabbed him. Their eyes met, sparking with an intense, silent battle of wills. As is often the way with men, the first exchange was a test of dominance. Before a victor could emerge, a cry of distress echoed from within the princess's chambers. The Red Knight Commander's heart sank. He confirmed Ailey was asleep before leaving. Had someone intruded again? Both men rushed back into the room. Pushing the door open, they found Ailey writhing on the bed, pleading as if trapped in a nightmare. The Red Knight Commander asked Leon to stay with Ailey while he fetched a physician. Suddenly, Ailey sat bolt upright, seemingly oblivious to their concern. Instead, she grabbed Leon by the collar and kissed him. The Red Knight Commander, the object of her affections, watched her embrace another man, a public display of affection that felt like a cruel twist of a knife. The Red Knight Commander, speechless, felt utterly invisible. Watching Leon being held so tightly by Ailey, only one thought consumed him. Why hadn't he been the first to reach her side? Their passionate embrace was a sharp pang in his chest. He finally realized the depth of his feelings for Ailey, feelings that transcended mere duty. Dawn broke, and Ailey awoke feeling inexplicably drained. Perhaps comforting her drunken brother had taken its toll. Strangely, the demon god's brand seemed to have subsided. She remembered being on the verge of collapse when it flared up. Ailey struggled to recall what had happened, but drew a blank. She noticed a folded letter on the table and realized it was from Leon. He wrote that he had sensed her discomfort and quietly taken his leave. Ailey was even more confused. Had Leon been there last night? Whatever had transpired between them, there was no need for further contact. She vaguely remembered another nightmare, a dream about her former maidservant. Pamela had forbidden her from eating, and the kind maidservant, unable to bear it, had snuck into the kitchen to steal bread. Her father had brutally murdered the girl before her very eyes. She had clutched the maidservant's body and wept for hours. From that day forward, she had learned to appease others, to constantly watch her step. A sudden gasp startled Ali from her reverie. She frowned, irritated by the maidservant's lack of decorum. After preparing herself, Ali left her chambers and immediately spotted the Red Knight commander. His dark circles betrayed another sleepless night. Ali worried that Pamela's displeasure would fall upon him if she discovered his unwavering devotion. Looking at the Red Knight commander, Ali suggested he be replaced as her personal guard. He was visibly crestfallen, but accepted her command, silently watching her depart. Her brother was absent from the dining hall. Pamela and Vivian, however, were engaged in lively conversation. Upon seeing Ali, Pamela's expression, as always, turned glacial. Vivian's reaction, however, surprised Ali. It seemed Pamela's invitation to breakfast was merely a way to demonstrate Vivian's lowly status to the new member of the family. Vivian remained seated while accepting Ali's greeting. Though angered, Ali suppressed her frustration. Pamela instructed her to treat Vivian and the young prince with kindness. Ali meekly agreed. As she began to eat, she noticed the soup in her bowl was spoiled and moldy. The other two women, however, were enjoying their soup, their conversation flowing smoothly. It appeared only her portion was tainted. Ali had expected the usual barrage of insults and a sickening display of familial harmony. Instead, Pamela changed tack, suggesting that Ali's younger brother's room be cleared out for the new prince. Ali trembled, a mixture of fury and despair rising within her. Her outburst of emotion brought a satisfied smirk to Pamela's lips. It's precisely because it was the prince's room that it should be given to the new prince. Ali, enraged, blurted out, "My brother, the emperor, promised that room would remain untouched." On countless sleepless nights, haunted by grief, he would seek solace in his brother's room. Her brother's beloved books, toys, and the portraits on the wall offered a flicker of warmth in the darkest hours. Pamela, however, scolded Ali for clinging to sentimentality, for preserving a room for someone who had abandoned his royal status. Mourning the past through memories is a great disrespect to His Majesty, Pamela declared. Therefore, he ordered the room cleared long ago. Ali shot to her feet and bolted for the door. Her brother's belongings were the last vestiges of him. She had to save them. Pamela ordered the princess seized. The royal knights, without hesitation, intercepted Ali, throwing her roughly to the ground. Pamela and Vivian exchanged amused glances. Humiliated and disheveled, Ali finally understood Pamela's motive for summoning her. It was to demonstrate to the newest member of the royal family, Vivian, Ali's fall from grace. Pamela wanted to make it clear who held the true power in the palace, who was master of them all, herself. Fighting back tears of shame, Ali begged Pamela not to destroy her brother's things. Suddenly, a commotion erupted outside. The guards restraining Ali collapsed, bodies hitting the floor. It was the Red Knight commander, bursting in, fury etched on his face. The formidable Red Knight commander, driven by his protective instincts for the princess, was on a rampage. Not only had he taken down the royal guards upon entry, but he now stood defiantly before the enraged Pamela, the Empress Dowager, and the true power in the empire. He declared his loyalty to the empire and to the emperor, vowing he would not stand by while the princess was unjustly bullied. Pamela's face darkened. She hadn't expected such defiance from a low-born commoner. Ali watched in terror. The memory of those who had cared for her, now lifeless corpses, flashed through her mind. She couldn't bear the thought of the Red Knight commander, her silent protector, suffering a similar fate. This was why she kept everyone at arm's length. Ali lashed out, her voice dripping with scorn, demanding the Red Knight commander apologize to Pamela immediately. Observing the shocked and angry expressions of the Red Knights, Pamela nodded, a satisfied smile playing on her lips. The Red Knight commander, however, remained unmoved. No matter how Ali insulted him, he simply stated he was merely fulfilling his duty and did not take orders from the princess. Pamela's fury ignited. The Red Knight commander's actions were a blatant challenge to her authority. She ordered her knights to seize him and was about to pronounce his punishment when a gentle voice interrupted. Seeing that it was Grand Duke Leon, who had just returned from his ministerial duties, Pamela quickly composed herself. She poured out her grievances to Grand Duke Leon, pointedly mentioning Ali's mother's alleged collusion with a dark sorcerer. She hoped to leverage Leon's position as a high-ranking nobleman to force the Red Knight commander commander to back down. However, Grand Duke Leon countered by asking Pamela her intentions. Even for health reasons, a room bearing traces of the late queen was unsuitable for the new prince. Rendered speechless, Pamela conceded, stating she would heed the Grand Duke's advice. However, since the taboo subject had been raised, she added, shouldn't the items in the princess's brother's room be dealt with as planned? Ailey's face paled. She ran frantically toward the door. She couldn't bear the thought of her brother's belongings completely disappearing. She had to save his portrait, at least. Pushing past guards and maids, she cried out, wait! But the sight that greeted her stole her voice. Her brother's portrait was untouched. Tears of relief streamed down Ailey's face. The scattered toys on the floor made her heart ache. These items were her only solace in the degrading reality of her palace life. Tragically, when Pamela had ordered their destruction, she had been powerless to protect them, reduced to pleading. If the Red Knight commander and his men hadn't intervened, she would have lost everything. Knowing that his actions would likely incur Pamela's wrath, Ailey quickly composed herself and berated him for his low birth, declaring him unworthy to guard her. She demanded he apologize to Pamela and leave immediately. The Red Knights were indignant. They voiced their outrage, arguing that the princess didn't deserve their protection. They couldn't understand their commander's loyalty to her. Ignoring Ailey's tirade, the Red Knight commander waited for the commotion to subside before kneeling before the princess. He had been a gladiator in the fighting pits, his origins indeed humble. Driven by the desire to become a respected knight and serve the empire, he had journeyed to the capital and joined the Red Knights, a regiment that accepted commoners. His exceptional performance had earned him the unusual honor of being assigned to guard the princess. Back then, he was young and full of fervor, proud to serve such a noble princess. However, he soon discovered the princess treated him with disdain and open hostility. Moreover, she would often unjustly scold the servants and then weep in secret. The princess is so capricious, he thought. She pushes everyone away, even hurting a child's well-intentioned kindness. How can I bring myself to believe I should protect her with my life? Even more puzzling was the nobility's sudden shift in attitude. Before, they'd met him with scorn and ridicule. Now, they were practically fawning. His fellow knights, those he trained with, advised him to be happy about it. Self-preservation was key. They'd heard that no one who got close to the princess lived long. The Red Knight commander was stunned. He'd almost forgotten. The princess's mother had been executed by her own father, the king, and her stepmother, Pamela, was notoriously cruel. So that was why the princess was the way she was. Her icy demeanor was her last shred of dignity, a desperate attempt to protect herself. From that moment on, the Red Knight commander feigned ignorance, secretly watching over Ailey. Seeing her clinging to hope amidst such hardship reminded him of himself. This time, he decided to follow his heart. He wouldn't stand by any longer. He hadn't expected this. The Red Knight commander, usually so effortlessly in control, was now defying her. Ailey stared, dumbfounded, as he knelt before her, stubbornly vowing to protect her. She had been so cruel, so dismissive. How could he possibly have seen through her facade and understood her true feelings? Years of suppressed loneliness and resentment surged forth, and Ailey crumbled, tears streaming down her face. It was then that the others finally understood. All her unreasonable behavior, her harshness, it was all to protect them. Their commander was truly perceptive. He'd seen through her all along. Thinking of everything the princess had endured, they realized she was the most vulnerable one of all. Composing herself, Ailey became even more determined to push the Red Knight commander away. She knew how hard it had been for him and his commoner knights to rise through the ranks. A single order from Pamela could destroy everything. None of them could bear the consequences. They remained locked in this stalemate, each clinging to their convictions. A messenger arrived, summoning Ailey to the Emperor immediately, breaking the tense silence. The Emperor, her brother, dismissed everyone else and apologized profusely to Ailey. He blamed himself for skipping breakfast, which had somehow led to this whole incident and caused her pain. He was deeply remorseful. In a fit of rage, he swept a vase from the table, shattering it on the floor. Ailey had never seen her brother like this. She stared, speechless. The Emperor quickly apologized, explaining that he'd just been so angry. He hoped he hadn't frightened her. He promised to preserve her younger brother's room and not let their mother interfere. Ailey's heart ached. She took her brother's trembling hand and thanked him sincerely. Her brother had always been so protective of her. Overcome with emotion, he blurted out that he wanted to send their mother away. He wanted Ailey to be her old self again, vibrant and carefree, like the day of the horse race when she galloped across the field, seemingly fearless. Leaving the palace, Ailey's head throbbed. This long, agonizing night had been utterly dreadful. The Red Knight Commander situation was still unresolved, and now Grand Duke Leon and Vivian, the new prince, had arrived, having received word of the commotion. The two men, who clearly despised each other, had arrived at the same time. Under the circumstances, she refused to see either of them. She finally managed to get rid of them, but then the demonic brand on her neck flared up earlier than expected. Ailey knew she needed to find a man, and fast. Despite drinking constantly, the burning desire consuming her body was agonizing. The demonic brand had awakened prematurely. She should have kept Vivian around. He could have help. Ailey cursed her pride, her damned refusal to appear vulnerable. The thought of enduring countless more episodes of this agonizing, despair-inducing brand filled her with dread. She had no energy left to deal with her brother, Grand Duke Leon, or Vivian. And then there was the Red Knight Commander, stubbornly clinging to her like a shadow. How could she make him leave? The sound of the Red Knight Commander knocking at her door sparked an idea. A desperate, perhaps even cruel idea. A loyal knight like him deserved a future, a purpose beyond serving her. Resolute, Ailey ordered the Red Knight Commander to remove all the guards from the palace. Though puzzled, the Red Knight Commander turned to carry out Ailey's order. Perhaps due to the demonic brand, Ailey suddenly felt an inexplicable tension, her heart pounding in her chest. The Red Knight Commander quickly returned, having completed the task. He resolutely told Ailey he would always protect her. You'll never lie? Even if it means offending the Empress Dowager, you'll protect me? No matter what I command, you'll obey? The Red Knight Commander nodded without hesitation, stating he would obey everything except an order to abandon the princess. Then undress, Ailey commanded. You may never have known, but I'm not a particularly good person. He's here, he's here. The Red Knight Commander's spring had arrived unexpectedly. The proud and noble white moonlight was about to shatter the harem and claim him. The straightforward Red Knight Commander's soul wasn't the only thing sent adrift. His body, too, seemed to have activated a cheat code, blossoming with Princess Ailey in an unstoppable cascade. This pairing was simply too good to be true. As the fallen princess's most devoted follower, the Red Knight Commander had always suppressed his straightforward knightly spirit, guarding his white moonlight, carrying the weight of countless unfulfilled desires of his fellow admirers. To him, any thought of intimacy with the princess was a sacrilegious poison. Didn't you say you'd obey my commands? Then take off your clothes. Ailey's thin lips curled. The Red Knight Commander was so stunned he nearly choked. He'd never imagined this command would be one executed in bed. The Red Knight Commander's cheeks burned. Unsure how to respond, he faced Ailey's relentless pressure. Both implicitly and explicitly, she made it clear she wanted him as her tool. For the commander of the Royal Red Flag Division, this was a humiliating slap in the face. But thinking of those who had been kind to him in the past, who had died at the hands of the Empress Dowager Pamela, Ailey felt a pang of guilt. More than anything, she wanted to push the Red Knight Commander away. For this, she saw no other choice. The Red Knight Commander's gaze was heavy. Unable to contain himself any longer, he dropped his accessories with a clang. Breathing heavily, he began his next actions, but with an air of innocent bewilderment. Ailey was completely taken aback. She watched him remove his tie, unbutton his shirt, watched as his 8-pack abs were revealed, watched the firm contours of his back. Wait, she thought, this isn't right. Things were heading in a strange direction. So, the reason you chose me, was it to force me to give up, or did you simply want my body? Looking at the sleeping Princess Ailey, the Red Knight Commander was lost in thought. Regardless of her reasons, he was grateful she had chosen him. Compared to being able to stay by the side of his beloved, reputation and status meant nothing to him. As dawn broke and birds began to sing, Ailey awoke feeling refreshed and invigorated. The scattered clothes on the floor brought back memories of last night's passion. It had actually been with the Red Knight Commander. His clumsy but earnest manner had been rather endearing. The ache in her body confirmed his surprising virility. His technique was unrefined, but his stamina was impressive. Joy turned to pain in an instant. present. Thankfully, the demonic brand was quiet. As A-Lee prepared to rise, she suddenly noticed the Red Knight commander kneeling by the bed. Startled, she quickly asked him when he had arrived and what he was doing. He replied that he had only focused on his own desires and hadn't satisfied hers. Even if it was his first time, such a transgression was unforgivable. He promised to try harder in the future. A-Lee was speechless. Didn't he find it insulting to be treated as a tool? How could he be upset about something so different from what a normal person would find objectionable? But revealing her true intentions and apologizing now felt overly dramatic. A-Lee decided to commit to her charade. She told the Red Knight commander that she was promiscuous and unworthy of his loyalty and protection. However, this only caused the Red Knight commander to become more emotional. He declared he would never abandon his duty to protect her. It was their shared vow from last night, and he wouldn't break it. He didn't care if she regretted her actions or where she went. He would decide his own life, even if it meant becoming the enemy of the entire world. You're very strong. It's such a waste. A-Lee's heart churned. She gently caressed the Red Knight commander's cheek. Finally, a glimpse of the princess's true feelings. The Red Knight commander solemnly vowed to be there whenever needed, on call. He would do his best. A-Lee was left reeling, utterly flabbergasted. This wasn't how she'd envisioned things at all. Wait, was Grand Duke Leon jealous? The Red Knight commander had barely left when A-Lee felt a wave of confusion wash over her. Grand Duke Leon, sensing the calming of A-Lee's brand, felt a pang of unease. He'd assumed that upon her return, the princess would seek him out to alleviate the burning of the brand. Now, it was clear his place had been taken. The princess had refused his visit, yet she'd turned around and embraced another man. The ever-proud Grand Duke Leon admitted to feeling hurt. It truly was a sight to behold, a beautiful man consumed by jealousy. A-Lee hastened to reassure Grand Duke Leon, telling him her reliance on him remained unchanged. It was Grand Duke Leon, she insisted, who had given her the courage to move forward, to no longer face her difficulties alone. A-Lee's sincerity and gratitude brought a secret smile to the Grand Duke's face. They shared a moment of quiet understanding, their spirits lifting. After their time apart, Grand Duke Leon remarked that A-Lee seemed different. She no longer possessed the icy demeanor and refusal of help that she once had. Thinking back, she realized she had indeed begun to accept the advice of the Grand Duke, the Red Knight commander, and her brother, the Emperor. She was different, but that also means there are more men around me. It's truly troublesome being a famous princess. It even frightens me a little. A-Lee's eyes widened. She had never seen Grand Duke Leon so playful. Don't be surprised. I was born without a reverent heart. Everyone knows I'm a brutally honest person. Just like now, when I say I'm fond of you. That was a lot to process. A-Lee was momentarily speechless. Well, regardless, that was an interesting thing to say. Watching A-Lee walk away, Grand Duke Leon smirked slightly. The foreign princess was cursed to regularly interact intimately with men. She has men, yet she gives none of them her heart. Why do I care about this? Why do I care who the final one will be? Who would inflict such a malicious curse, the summer's end banquet, on someone who has lost everything and has no means of self-preservation? From this day forward, the princess must be wary of everyone around her, even me. Ever since learning of Princess A-Lee's curse, an insatiable desire for men, Grand Duke Leon had been secretly capturing any dark mages within his reach. Unfortunately, despite repeatedly presenting the totem of the demonic god's rhyme, he had yet to receive a satisfactory answer. He couldn't extract anything of value from the mages. Every attempt was futile. He'd been investigating for so long, yet he still had no leads. Even with such an obvious clue as the prerequisite for the curse's activation, a massacre. Whether it was a war between two nations or a large-scale, unilateral slaughter, there was no information to be found. Could it be that the person who cast the curse had no intention of destabilizing the princess's position? Perhaps their ultimate goal was to form a cursed romantic relationship with the princess. Grand Duke Leon had a hunch that this theory was likely closest to the truth. A-Lee's cheerful voice interrupted his thoughts. Looking at the beautiful, radiant princess before him, Grand Duke Leon was almost certain that he wasn't the only one who wanted to be close to her. Everyone around the princess was suspicious. Let's move on to the next suspect, stepmother Pamela. As soon as the words left his mouth, Eli felt a prickle of discomfort in the grand royal conference hall. She didn't understand why she had been summoned to a discussion of such importance as the national festival. She was a disgraced princess, one whom even the maids dared to bully freely. Who would care about her opinions or stance? Even with the emperor and Pamela at odds, she could only remain silent. Though come to think of it, her brother, the emperor's temper, seemed to be growing shorter. He was openly defying Pamela right in front of everyone. Was this really the brother she knew? Eli finally understood that there was more to life than just being caught in the crossfire. Sometimes you could be crushed by drama simply by sitting still. Pamela had been discussing the festival preparations with the emperor. The emperor, annoyed by the young prince's fussing, asked Vivian to take him away. This displeased Pamela, who admonished her son to treat the empress with respect and promised Vivian a perfect wedding. No sooner had the words left her mouth than the emperor, his voice thick with emotion, declared he had no intention of marrying. Pamela watched, stunned, as her usually obedient son openly defied her. Pamela's fury ignited. She berated the emperor for his disrespectful treatment of Vivian, the woman who had borne him child. Seizing the opportunity, she proposed that Vivian wear a golden gown and attend the founding festival alongside the emperor. The announcement sent shockwaves through the room. The emperor, fists clenched, asked his mother if she intended to make Vivian this year's Golden Phoenix. Pamela demurred, claiming it was merely about wearing a golden gown. Since the founding of the first royal dynasty, the Golden Phoenix had been revered as a wise, divine bird. Each generation, a member of the royal family donned a golden feather gown and presided over the founding festival, a symbol of their noble status. Ailey recognized the move as a blatant attempt to solidify Vivian's position. As Vivian beamed with undisguised delight, the emperor uttered a seemingly indifferent, "As you wish." Then prepare 2 feather gowns. 1 golden gown later, this year's Golden Phoenix won't be me, but the princess. His words stirred a tempest. Ailey's face paled, and she rushed to intervene. Any royal family member could be the Golden Phoenix, but if chosen by the emperor, it signified to the entire populace that Ailey was the next in line for the throne. Pamela roared in outrage, scarcely able to believe her own son had uttered such words. The emperor, however, remained resolute. He pointed out that Pamela had brought Vivian and her child into the palace without so much as a word to anyone. And now you expect an emperor, incapable of producing an heir, to become the sacred Golden Phoenix? Don't you find that amusing? Red Knight Commander fans, gather round. Here's a treat for you. Check out this heart-pounding, derivative action. Like, subscribe, and save this moment. Whether it's a heroic rescue or a beautiful disaster, let's just say the Red Knight Commander's black gloves are seriously cool. But this intimate scene? It was just him helping the princess train her Hurlith, a small accident that spiraled out of control. The bird, known for its ferocity, was surprisingly affectionate towards Ailey. In a sudden dive, it pecked the Red Knight Commander's finger, drawing blood. Ailey gasped, her clumsy attempts to staunch the bleeding with her handkerchief, eliciting a laugh from the Red Knight Commander in a straightforward manner. Grand Duke Leon, witnessing the scene from afar, was instantly consumed by a dark mood. Remembering Ailey's rejection, he stood silently for a long moment before turning and walking away. Meanwhile, Deputy Commander Paul, thinking of his commander, couldn't help but sigh. Everyone knew the true power in the royal court resided with the emperor's mother, Pamela. Given her disdain for the princess, the closer the commander got to Ali, the bleaker the future of the Red Knight Order became. Meanwhile, in a secluded room within the palace, Vivian watched her brother, his face contorted with rage. She had gone to extreme lengths to bear the emperor an heir and had even convinced her father to offer all of their family's mines to Pamela. Her goal was to secure a place within the royal family, allowing her family to gain influence in the central government and, more importantly, to help Pamela control the increasingly powerful Brienne family. Unfortunately, this seemingly perfect plan hadn't come to fruition. Duke Brienne was still away, subduing a rebellion, and the Golden Phoenix incident had made her a laughingstock. Considering the emperor's unconcealed disgust for her, it seemed she would have to seek some recompense from the princess. What could be more exhilarating than utterly crushing the last of the royal bloodline? The thought of once proud nobles groveling at her feet, begging for mercy, filled her with a delicious sense of conquest. Even the Red Knight Order, would pay the price for their foolish loyalty. Pamela would not tolerate any rival factions challenging her authority. However, the emperor's open defiance of his mother in the council meeting was unexpected. The fact that the usually domineering Pamela had restrained herself was intriguing. The two were bound by mutual interest, and it seemed this delicate balance would persist. Since the emperor had finally shown some backbone, they simply needed to play their part in maintaining the equilibrium between the two. Given the right opportunity, who would willingly oppose Grand Duchess Pamela? As usual, Elie was nestled in her summer palace, engrossed in a book. Suddenly, a maid burst in, pleading with her to save Sally, another servant. Vivian, it seemed, intended to have Sally's ankles severed as punishment. The maids flocked around Princess Elie, pleading for her help. Elie's head throbbed. It wasn't just the maid's unpermitted intrusion. In his current position, he simply couldn't guarantee Sally's safety from Vivian. Watching Elie and her entourage approach, Vivian smiled enigmatically, sensing the unfolding drama. The marks on the maid Sally's hands made the princess frown. Across from Vivian, a young man stepped forward with a slow bow. Elie suddenly remembered him. He was one of the white knights who had dragged her away when she'd begged Pamela to spare her own maid. She never would have guessed he and Vivian were siblings. A resounding slap echoed through the hall, shocking everyone present. Everyone stared, stunned, at Sally, who lay sprawled on the floor after the princess's slap. Just moments ago, Vivian had declared that Sally, for her impertinence in trespassing on the noble's passage, should have her ankles severed. The terrified maids had hoped the princess would save Sally. Instead, without a single question, the princess had slapped the maid and ordered her to apologize. This pleased Vivian immensely. She'd intended it as a warning. Then Elie spoke, her voice calm. Sally's use of a noble's passage, she said, was not a punishable offense. Unlike the nobility, the royal family's residence had no designated areas. Given that this was Vivian's first time in the palace, a misunderstanding was understandable. The maid's eyes lit up with hope. Vivian flushed with anger, convinced the princess was subtly insulting her low status and lack of experience. Desperate to regain control, she latched onto the fact that the maid had stepped on her dress. Sally tearfully explained that Vivian's brother, Sir Alan, had tripped her. The siblings' faces paled. They frantically tried to silence her. Alan even drew his dagger, intending to cut out her tongue. So eager are we? Elie's lips curved into a slight smile as she stepped in front of Sally, shielding her with outstretched arms. Sir Alan, please restrain yourself. This was all my fault, a lapse in my management. I will ensure my staff is properly disciplined. Seeing the princess lower herself to apologize to a noble, Vivian, triumphant, couldn't resist bringing up the time Elie had ruined her dress kneeling before her stepmother, begging for mercy. To think that the Golden Phoenix's offspring would one day bow before her. The future promised to be very entertaining indeed. The siblings, smug and satisfied, turned to leave. Elie slowly lifted her head. Her voice, devoid of warmth, echoed down the hallway. Seize Sir Alan. Execute Sir Alan. As Elie lifted her head and delivered the death sentence, the Red Knights instantly drew their swords and lunged towards Vivian and her brother. Sir Alan, utterly bewildered, barely had time to react before a sword was pressed against his throat. Vivian, furious, demanded to know the meaning of this. Elie calmly replied. Sir Alan drew his weapon without royal permission. He pointed it at me in full view of everyone present. Does he harbor treasonous intentions towards the royal family? Alan, sweating profusely, stammered that the princess had stepped in front of him. Elie cut him off. That is irrelevant. Whether Sir Alan intentionally tripped my maid or whether it was an accident is also immaterial. The two scenarios are equally insignificant. The essence remains the same. As a princess, I lowered myself to apologize. I wonder how Sir Alan intends to offer his apologies. Vivian and her brother were speechless, their teeth grinding with rage. Alan, incredulous, demanded to know what the princess thought she was doing. He couldn't comprehend this sudden change in the meek, compliant princess. Sir Alan, you dare threaten the princess? You speak with disrespect and offer no apology. Carry out my order. Execute him. Elie's voice was ice cold. This time, even the Red Knight hesitated. He knew this act could endanger the entire Red Knight order. But his duty was to the royal family. Without further hesitation, the Red Knight swung his sword towards Sir Alan. The chilling blade descended. Alan's mind went blank. Vivian's face drained of color as she watched her brother, unable to believe her eyes. I'm sorry, I was wrong. It was my fault for behaving so recklessly and forgetting my place. Princess, please forgive me. I promise to reflect on my actions. Please have mercy and let me go. I know I was wrong. Forced to watch her brother grovel before Princess Ailey, Vivian had to admit defeat. The situation was made even worse by the princess's pointed summoning of Sally, the maid. Let him learn from Sir Alan how to properly apologize and beg for forgiveness. Ailey's words were a public slap in the face, stripping both siblings of what little dignity they had left. Putting her lesson into practice, Ailey then ordered the maid to apologize to the humiliated siblings. Vivian and Alan were forced to swallow their pride, plastering on strained smiles as they accepted the maid's apology. It was clear to everyone that Vivian had completely backfired. Ailey thanked the siblings for their magnanimity. As a reward, she declared that she would no longer pursue Sir Alan's transgression. After all, she continued, ordering a knight's execution for merely disciplining a maid would be a rather excessive response. A collective gasp rippled through the onlookers. Such humiliation was unbearable for any noble. Without sparing the siblings another glance, Ailey rose and returned to her chambers. Only then, in private, did she allow herself to feel the exhaustion threatening to overwhelm her. The whole affair had begun with a simple act of compassion, a desire to smooth things over. She hadn't intended for it to escalate. In the past, she would have readily discarded her pride. But this time, something felt different. She recalled the grateful gazes of those around her. Even the Red Knight commander had praised her actions, expressing his pride. The unfamiliar warmth was still unsettling. Yet, the feeling of protecting someone else, it made her feel less broken. She was the most powerful woman in the empire, and also a nobleman's bastard daughter. She had schemed and manipulated, ensuring her own illegitimate son became the new emperor before the empress's wedding. She had clawed her way to the pinnacle of power, but it wasn't enough. She had chosen Vivian, a noble woman, and even drugged her own son, the emperor, to ensure a bastard grandson who could be named the Little Prince. With the imperial succession seemingly secured and the noble's support firmly in her grasp, the late empress's daughter, Princess Ailey, with her pure royal bloodline, remained a potent threat to the new regime to her little prince. And her foolish son, so protective of his half-sister, insisted on Ailey being the golden phoenix at the upcoming founding festival. She had spared Ailey's life out of concern for public opinion. But the girl clearly didn't understand her place, defending a mere maid and publicly humiliating Vivian and her brother. She, Pamela, would choose the future empress. How dare Ailey defy her so brazenly? But this fallen princess, what tricks had she employed? Even Grand Duke Leon, a man of immense power, had approached her. He had pledged his unwavering loyalty, seeking only Ailey's hand in marriage. The Grand Duke's sincerity was irrelevant. Leaving such an unpredictable threat unchecked wasn't Pamela's style. Waiting for Ailey and the Grand Duke to unite against her was far too risky. Better to act swiftly and eliminate the problem. Even if Grand Duke Leon was displeased, he would never be able to trace it back to her. The founding festival was fast approaching. They said the higher the climb, the harder the fall. She wondered what spectacle the Golden Phoenix would make as she plummeted. If your highness ever requires the services of a man, please call upon me. Ailey stared at the Red Knight commander, utterly dumbfounded by his solemn declaration. She couldn't believe he had pulled her aside so urgently to say that. Shouldn't he be worried about Pamela's wrath, about the future of the Knight Order? Standing here by the roadside discussing men, it was mortifying. Thankfully, her flustered maid quickly arrived with news of Grand Duke Leon's visit. Watching the two men lock eyes, the tension palpable, Ailey wanted to disappear. If she had a choice, she would never interact with Grand Duke Leon again. But as he had warned, Pamela had set her sights on the Red Knight commander. He couldn't be put in danger again. This being the case, the choice of partner for the Golden Child, could it be that he truly had to accept Duke David's proposal? He reminded her that the Golden Child represented the authority of the royal family. Surely the princess wouldn't want to disappoint His Majesty. I'll prepare the ceremonial robes and the surgical procedure, all in styles you'll like. Ailey still hesitated. Duke David bowed, a gesture of courtly grace. He expressed his willingness to be the princess's shield during her time as the golden child. But this brief touch was like a spark igniting a hidden fuse. With a sudden rush, Ailey felt her mind reel. The brand on her back threatened to flare. Frightened, she hastily pulled away from the Duke's hand, abruptly excusing herself to avoid his touch. Meanwhile, in the depths of the palace, the cries of a baby echoed. The young emperor, in a furious rage, banished William. Vivian, unwilling to accept defeat, fought back fiercely. But she accidentally uncovered a great secret the emperor had kept hidden in his heart. The man's hand tightened around her throat, his voice a menacing threat that he would never let her go. In that moment, Vivian felt the chilling proximity of death. Despite bearing the emperor's illegitimate child, she remained nameless and without status. The emperor heaped humiliation upon her, refusing even to acknowledge his own child. She had hoped to leverage the empress's influence to instill some fear in the emperor, but he would rather defy his own mother than be associated with Vivian. He warned Vivian that if she caused any trouble at the founding festival, there would be dire consequences. This cold-hearted man actually cared for his half-sister. A downtrodden, bullied princess, what right did she have to claim nobility? Vivian gritted her teeth. She trusted her instincts. This was definitely not a normal sibling relationship. The day of the festival arrived. Heavens, I can't believe it. This is our princess, the one we serve in the name of heaven. The maid stared, wide-eyed, at the princess in her magnificent robes. Such a radiant, dazzling princess, revealed before everyone. Noble and breathtaking. They should be happy. Why did her beauty feel so intimidating? A hush fell over the Red Knight commander. Duke David, in a white gold ceremonial robe, approached. He extended an invitation to the princess with elegant grace. Gasps rippled through the crowd. This stunning pair was a sight to behold. As their fingers intertwined, a tide of complex emotions washed over Ailey. Once, being escorted through crowds by this hand had felt so natural. Why now did it feel so awkward, like she was doing something she shouldn't? The carriage moved forward. The strangely familiar path to the altar came into view. After so many years, she hadn't expected to set foot here again as the golden child. Perhaps no one remembered that she, too, had once been the Empire's chosen one, the golden child appointed by her father's decree. It had been so long since she had faced her people in such a formal setting. The young woman took a deep breath, looking out at the throngs of people surrounding the altar. Noble golden child, please bestow upon us wisdom and a bountiful harvest. The emperor chuckled, complimenting Ailey's attire. The Empress and Vivian, however, remained unusually silent. The clock's chime announced the start of the ceremony. Ailey passed through the bustling crowd. The crown, exclusive to the golden child, was placed upon her head. Crowned, Ailey's bearing became even more regal. After a moment of composure, she turned towards the altar steps, and used to such high heels, she stumbled, falling straight into Duke David's arms. "Walk forward. I will protect you," Duke David murmured. Startled, Ailey felt an unexpected sense of security. Gripping the Duke's hand, she ascended the steps. "Do you want to marry me that badly? Is that why my dear brother made me the golden child? You always play these kinds of games." Duke David paused, then admitted, "Yes, I am a man who will use any means necessary." As the altar drew closer, Ailey urged him not to waste his time on her. He was already a national hero, privy to the kingdom's secrets. His family was destined to rise again because of him. He didn't need to court a discarded princess. Releasing the Duke's hand, Ailey ascended the final steps without looking back. The lush, sacred tree was within reach. Just pluck the yellow fruit of light, and the ceremony can conclude. The crowd erupted in cheers, their gazes fixed on the altar. Ailey reached for the fruit of light. A blinding golden radiance engulfed everything. The fruit transformed into a serpentine monster, its fanged maw lunging towards Ailey. Grand Duke Leon's mind went blank. He watched as Ailey plummeted from the heights. Like a beautiful butterfly falling, she spiraled downwards. His heart seized in his chest, his breath stolen. The golden child, chosen to pray for the Empire's fortune, had fallen from the altar. Whether by malicious intent or a tragic accident, the implications were devastating. In that moment, Pamela and Vivian could barely conceal their excitement and anticipation. "She's going to die. Perhaps I'll finally see Mother completely free," Vivian thought. A single tear escaped the corner of Ailey's eye as her golden figure continued its descent. "It's a shame," she thought. I'll never see Alan again. The crowd gasped, covering their eyes, unable to bear witness. Then, a miracle unfolded. A golden light suddenly emanated from Princess Ailey. The light halted her fall, her body suspended in midair. Simultaneously, a powerful surge of energy pulsed from the brand on her neck. The light cradled her as she descended gracefully to the ground. After a moment of stunned silence, a tremendous roar erupted. The crowd surged forward in a wave of disbelief. How could this be? Pamela and Vivian stared at each other, aghast. They never could have imagined such a dramatic reversal. Ailey, slowly regaining her senses, looked out at the sea of faces, equally bewildered. Who could have foreseen that the demonic brand would be her salvation? The crowd chanted, "Long live the princess." Their voices swelled with fervor and excitement. They celebrated the golden child's spectacular return. The scene stirred a poignant memory within Ailey. She recalled her younger self, reaching for the fruit of light, believing she would be their eternal ruler. Now, even her survival seemed a precarious hope. Grand Duke Leon breathed a sigh of relief. He rushed towards Ailey, along with the Emperor and the Red Knight commander, eager to inquire about her well-being. But their questions unearthed a truth they couldn't accept. Ailey was once again caught in a whirlwind of speculation, the subject of heated debate. Had someone secretly unleashed the monster to attack the golden child? Or had the princess, experiencing a hallucination, used forbidden dark magic? Pamela, with a seemingly casual remark, successfully diverted the crowd's attention. Clearly, the former lacked eyewitnesses. Grand Duke Leon had been some distance from the altar, but the princess, emitting a golden light and descending from the sky, that everyone had seen. The punishment for using dark magic was public execution. The crowd's perception of the princess shifted, their gazes now laced with suspicion. Vivian couldn't believe the turn of events. It was a gift from the heavens. Inwardly, she rejoiced, but outwardly, she feigned a look of horrified helplessness, worried about the impact on young Prince Dean. Pamela, like a hunter waiting to spring her trap, fixed a burning gaze on Ailey. "Defy her, and you'll pay a price you can't afford." "I can testify," a voice called out. A cloaked figure emerged from the crowd. Beneath the hood was a face of striking beauty. It was Bishop Owen. "Princess Ailey has received a divine blessing. The holy light is a rare and sacred miracle." With just a few words, Bishop Owen shifted the tide of opinion in Ailey's favor. Pamela, seething, could only suppress her rage and bide her time. Ailey's mind raced. Could it have been the power of the brand that saved her? Pamela, unable to let the opportunity slip, was about to retort when Grand Duke Leon descended from the altar, dragging the serpentine monster behind him. The princess was indeed attacked. "I swear on my family name, I will investigate this thoroughly. This will not go unpunished."